The desert wind carried whispers of a forgotten past as Fiona Sullivan stepped onto the dusty main street of Silver Creek, her copper hair catching the golden light of the setting sun. Her fingers absently traced the colorful beaded bracelet on her wrist, a treasured memento from a time that seemed like another life, its intricate pattern of blue and amber beads catching the fading sunlight. She had traveled 200 miles to this remote frontier town, and with each step toward the weathered saloon, the weight of her purpose grew heavier. Silver Creek, Wyoming territory, 1876. The town had grown since she'd last seen it 5 years and a lifetime ago. New establishments lined the street, a general store, a proper hotel replacing the old boarding house, and Holloway's saloon, where she now stood, gathering her courage. Inside, the familiar scent of whiskey, tobacco, and unwashed bodies assaulted her senses. Piano notes danced through the haze of smoke as Fiona scanned the crowded room. Men turned to stare, some with curiosity, others with intentions that made her spine stiffen, but she wasn't looking for them. "Miss, can I help you?" The bartender's voice cut through her thoughts. "I'm looking for someone," Fiona replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Adam Irving, I heard he might be here." The bartender's expression changed, a flicker of recognition passing over his weathered face. "The rancher, tall fellow with the scar along his jawline?" Her heart skipped. "Yes. He comes in most evenings, should be here soon enough." He gestured to an empty table. "Care for a drink while you wait?" Fiona ordered a whiskey, though drinking wasn't her intent. She needed something to occupy her hands and justify her presence in this masculine domain. The liquor burned her throat as she took a small sip. Memories flooding back, memories of skilled hands working leather and beads, of promises whispered under a star-filled sky, of a young cowboy's smile before the war changed everything. The saloon doors swung open an hour later, and conversation momentarily hushed. Fiona's breath caught in her throat as Adam Irving stepped inside, taller and broader than she remembered. The boy she once knew, now fully a man. The scar that traced his jawline was new, as was the hardness in his eyes. His dark hat shadowed his face, but she would have known him anywhere. He nodded to familiar faces as he made his way to the bar, unaware of her presence. Fiona watched, paralyzed, as he ordered a drink, removed his gloves, and placed them on the counter. Something fell from his pocket, something small that glinted in the lamplight. Adam quickly retrieved it, but not before Fiona caught sight of familiar beads. She rose on unsteady legs, her heart thundering in her chest. 5 steps. 4. 3. His back still turned to her. "Adam!" He stiffened at the sound of her voice. Slowly he turned, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief as recognition dawned. "Fiona?" His voice was deeper, rougher than she remembered. She nodded, unable to find words as emotions threatened to overwhelm her. Without thinking, she raised her wrist, displaying the beaded bracelet he had made for her long ago. Adam's eyes fell to the bracelet, then rose to meet hers. With deliberate movements, he reached into his pocket and pulled out what she had glimpsed earlier, the broken remnant of a matching bracelet. Its pattern identical, but its circle incomplete, beads missing where the leather had snapped. "You kept it," she whispered. "And you kept yours," he replied, his voice barely audible over the saloon's noise. The world around them seemed to fade away as they stood facing each other, 1,000 unspoken words hanging in the air between them. "Perhaps," he finally said, his eyes never leaving hers, "we should talk somewhere quieter." Outside, the desert night had descended, stars puncturing the velvet darkness. They walked in silence to a small bench near the livery stable, far enough from the saloon's noise to hear each other speak. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," Adam said, rolling the broken bracelet between his fingers. "Not after you left." "I didn't have a choice." Fiona looked down at her own bracelet. "My father—" "I know," he cut her off. "Your father didn't think a ranch hand was good enough for his daughter." The bitterness in his voice stung, but Fiona couldn't deny the truth of it. Her father had been determined to see her married to a businessman from Boston, not a penniless cowboy with dreams larger than his pockets. "I wrote to you," she said softly. "After we left. I never received any letters. My father—" Understanding crossed her features. He must have intercepted them. Adam's jaw tightened. And what brings you back to Silver Creek now, after 5 years? My father passed away 6 months ago. She met his gaze directly. And I realized I'd spent too long living someone else's life. The silence between them stretched, filled with questions neither dared to ask. I hear you have a ranch now, Fiona finally said. Adam nodded. 300 acres south of town. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Pride crept into his voice. Built it from nothing. I always knew you would. She smiled, remembering the ambitious young man who had spoken endlessly of land and cattle and building something that would last. What about you? Did your father get what he wanted? Did you marry your Boston gentleman? Fiona shook her head. No, I was engaged briefly. But I couldn't. She trailed off, her fingers automatically tracing the beads on her wrist. I couldn't give away what wasn't mine to give. Adam's eyes followed the movement, then rose to search her face. Why did you come looking for me, Fiona? Because I never stopped wondering, she admitted. About what might have been. About whether you still thought of me. She gestured to the broken bracelet in his hand. Now I know. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and distant rain. Adam's hand moved toward hers, then stopped, hovering in the space between them. 5 years is a long time, he said, his voice rough. We're not the same people we were. No, Fiona agreed. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Fiona could see the flicker of the boy she had loved beneath the man's weathered exterior. I'm staying at Miller's Hotel, she said, breaking the silence. I'll be in town for 2 weeks while I settle some of my father's business affairs. Adam nodded, understanding her unspoken invitation. I could show you the changes in town tomorrow, if you'd like. I would. He stood, placing his hat back on his head. I'll call for you at 10 then. Fiona rose as well. I'd like that. As they walked back toward the main street, their steps fell naturally in rhythm. No promises were made, no declarations offered. But when Adam's hand brushed against hers in the darkness, neither pulled away. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the spring air carrying a crispness that would burn away as the sun climbed higher. Fiona dressed with care in a simple blue dress, her thoughts racing with anticipation and doubt in equal measure. At precisely 10 o'clock, a knock came at her door. Adam stood in the hallway, hat in hand, his dark hair neatly combed. He'd traded his work clothes for a clean shirt and vest, though his boots still carried the dust of ranch life. Good morning, he said, his eyes taking in her appearance with appreciative restraint. Good morning. She smiled, noting the effort he'd made. You look well. A hint of color touched his cheeks. As do you. He offered his arm, and she took it, aware of the curious glances they received as they descended the hotel stairs and emerged onto the boardwalk. Silver Creek was small enough that the return of Sullivan's daughter and her apparent acquaintance with Irving the rancher would spark gossip before noon. Where shall we start? Fiona asked, conscious of his solid presence beside her. I thought perhaps the general store. Old Jenkins retired, and his sons expanded it considerably. They made their way down the street, Adam pointing out the change's new buildings, old ones repurposed. The town had grown, prospering from the railroad that now passed 10 miles to the north, and the cattle drives that came through each season. And there's the schoolhouse, he said, nodding toward a white clapboard building at the end of the street. Built it 3 years ago. Got a proper teacher from Denver now. Fiona smiled. You sound proud. I helped build it, he shrugged. But she could see the satisfaction in his expression. Served on the town council for a spell, too. As they walked, she noticed how people greeted him with respect, with warmth. The angry young ranch hand who had once railed against the constraints of his station had become a man of standing in the community. They stopped for lunch at a small cafe run by a Chinese family where Adam was clearly a regular. The owner's wife fussed over them, bringing extra portions and smiling knowingly at Fiona. Mrs. Lynn seems to think there's something between us, Fiona observed after the woman had left them with slices of apple pie. Adam looked up from his coffee. People talk in a town this size. He hesitated. Does that bother you? No, she answered honestly. Does it bother you? The corner of his mouth lifted. I find I don't mind it much at all. After lunch, they continued their tour, ending at the livery stable where Adam had left his horse. "Would you like to see the ranch?" he asked suddenly. "It's not far, about 4 miles south." The invitation surprised her, but she nodded. "I'd like that very much." He saddled 2 horses, his own sturdy gelding and a gentle mare for her. Fiona gathered her skirts, grateful she'd chosen a practical dress, and mounted with the ease of someone who'd grown up around horses. Adam's eyebrows raised slightly and she laughed. "Did you think I'd forgotten how to ride?" "I wasn't sure what Boston might have done to you," he replied with a smile that reminded her of the boy she'd known. They rode out of town, following a well-worn trail that wound through sage-dotted hills. Adam pointed out landmarks, a rock formation shaped like a resting buffalo, a stand of cottonwoods that marked the creek boundary of his property. As they crested a rise, his ranch came into view. It wasn't grand by Eastern standards, but Fiona could immediately see the care and work that had gone into it. A solid 2-story house of wooden construction stood amid several outbuildings. Fenced pastures stretched in 3 directions, dotted with cattle. A windmill turned lazily in the afternoon breeze. "Adam," she breathed, "it's wonderful." His pride was evident in the set of his shoulders. "Built the house myself, with some help from neighbors. Took most of a year." "You did all this in 5 years?" He nodded, guiding his horse down the slope. "Got lucky with a few good cattle drives. Won some land in a poker game. The rest was just work." As they approached the house, a dog came bounding out to greet them, followed by an older man who emerged from one of the outbuildings. "That's Frank," Adam explained. "My foreman and right hand. Been with me since the beginning." Frank raised a hand in greeting, his weathered face curious as he took in Fiona. "Didn't expect company, boss," he called as they dismounted. "Frank, this is Miss Fiona Sullivan," Adam said. "Fiona, this is Frank Barnett." Recognition flashed in the older man's eyes. "Sullivan? You'd be old Henry's daughter, then?" "Yes, sir," Fiona replied. Frank glanced between them, understanding dawning. "Well now, ain't that something?" He tipped his hat. "Welcome to the bar wine, Miss Sullivan. Been hearing about you for years." Adam cleared his throat, a warning in his eyes that Frank acknowledged with a barely perceptible nod. "I'll see to the horses," Frank said. "You 2 go on up to the house." Adam offered Fiona his arm again as they walked up the path to the porch. The house was simple but solidly built, with a covered porch that wrapped around 2 sides. "It's not fancy," he warned as he opened the door. "I'm not looking for fancy," she replied. Inside, the main room was larger than she expected, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. Bookshelves lined another, filled with volumes that surprised her in their variety, and practical furniture arranged for comfort rather than show. Large windows let in the afternoon light, illuminating a space that was undeniably masculine but not unwelcoming. "You have a beautiful home," Fiona said, meaning it. Adam watched her as she moved through the room, his expression unreadable. "It's missing things," he finally said. "A woman's touch," Frank says. Fiona turned to face him, her heart suddenly racing. "And what do you say?" "I say he might be right." Adam took a step toward her. "I built all this thinking it might be enough. That if I had land and cattle and a house I could be proud of, I'd stop wondering about what might have been." "And did you?" she asked, hardly daring to breathe. "No." His voice was low. "I never stopped wondering, never stopped remembering." His hand reached out, fingers lightly touching the beaded bracelet on her wrist. "Why did you keep it, Fiona?" "Because it was all I had left of you," she whispered. His eyes, green as summer grass, searched hers. "And now?" Instead of answering, Fiona closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. For a heartbeat, he remained still, then his arms came around her, pulling her close as he returned the kiss with a hunger that matched her own. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "We should talk about what this means," he said, though his hands remained at her waist, unwilling to let her go. "Yes," Fiona agreed. "But not yet." He smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed his face. "Not yet," he echoed, and drew her close again. They spent the afternoon talking, Adam showing her the rest of the house and the nearby outbuildings. They spoke of the years they'd missed Fiona's time in Boston, the society she'd found stifling. Adam's struggles and triumphs in building his ranch. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Adam saddled the horses for their return to town. "Will you dine with me tomorrow evening?" he asked as they rode side by side. "Yes," Fiona replied without hesitation. "But tonight, I'd like to invite you to dine with me at the hotel restaurant. I believe they serve a decent steak." Adam's smile lit his eyes. "I'd be honored." In town, they parted briefly so Adam could see to the horses and Fiona could freshen up. When they met again in the hotel dining room, heads turned and whispers followed. Fiona found she didn't care. For the first time in 5 years, she felt truly alive. Over dinner, they ventured into more difficult territory. "Your father never approved of me," Adam said, cutting into his steak. "I can't imagine he'd be pleased to see you back here." Fiona sipped her wine. "My father was a complicated man. He thought he knew what was best for everyone, especially me." She set down her glass. "But in his final days, he said something that surprised me. He asked if I'd ever been happy in Boston." Adam's eyebrows rose. "And what did you tell him?" "The truth. That I'd tried to be the daughter he wanted. But my heart was never in it." She met his gaze steadily. "He asked where my heart was. I couldn't tell him then, but I think he knew." "And now?" Adam asked, echoing his question from earlier. "Where is your heart now, Fiona?" She smiled. "I think you know the answer to that." He reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I want to hear you say it. My heart is wherever you are, Adam. It always has been." The days that followed took on a dreamlike quality. Adam showed Fiona the surrounding countryside, took her fishing in the creek that ran through his property, introduced her to neighbors who welcomed her with curious warmth. Each evening they dined together, sometimes at the hotel, sometimes at the small cafe, once at his ranch where he proudly cooked a meal that was simple but delicious. On the 5th day, as they rode through a meadow bursting with early wildflowers, Fiona brought up what had been weighing on her mind. "I have to return to Boston next week," she said, "to finish settling my father's affairs." Adam's expression tightened. "I see. It's not what you're thinking," she hurried to add. "I'm not staying there. I need to sell the house, finalize some investments, pack my belongings." He reined his horse to a stop, turning to face her. And then I was hoping I might come back here, permanently." She met his eyes. "If I have a reason to?" Adam dismounted and came to help her down from her horse. When her feet touched the ground, he didn't release her waist. "Fiona Sullivan," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I have spent 5 years building a life, hoping that someday it might be worthy of you. If you want a reason to come back to Silver Creek, I can give you one." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the broken beaded bracelet he always carried. "I kept this to remind myself of what I'd lost, and what I was working toward. I never imagined I'd get a second chance." Fiona's eyes filled with tears as he took her hand, the one wearing the bracelet he'd made her. "I'm not the same hot-headed boy you knew," he said, "and I know you're not the same girl, but I think I hope that who we've become might fit together even better than who we were." "Adam," she whispered, her heart so full she could hardly speak. "Marry me, Fiona. Come back to me and stay." The tears spilled over as she nodded. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." His kiss was tender at first, then deepened with a passion that left them both breathless. When they finally pulled apart, Adam pressed his forehead to hers, his hands framing her face. "I love you," he said. "I never stopped loving you." "And I love you," she replied, "always." They spent the remainder of the afternoon in the meadow, talking of plans and dreams, of a future that had once seemed impossible. When they finally rode back to town, Fiona wore not only her original bracelet, but also its broken match, which Adam had carefully tied around her other wrist. "It's a promise," he said, "that what was broken can be made whole again." The news of their engagement spread quickly through Silver Creek. Most seemed pleased, especially those who remembered the young couple from years before. A few raised eyebrows at the speed of the courtship, but Adam and Fiona paid little heed to gossip. They agreed that Fiona would return to Boston as planned, settle her affairs, and return to Silver Creek in 2 months' time for a simple wedding. Adam wanted to accompany her, but the ranch demanded his attention with calving season approaching. 2 months, he said on their last evening together, holding her close on his porch as they watched the sun set. It feels like an eternity. We've waited 5 years, Fiona reminded him. 2 months will pass before you know it. He kissed her softly. Write to me every day. I will, she promised, and this time my letters will reach you. The morning of her departure arrived too soon. Adam drove her to the stagecoach stop in his wagon, her small trunk loaded in the back. They had said their private goodbyes the night before, but parting in the bright morning light was no less painful. 2 months, she repeated, standing on tiptoe to kiss him one last time as the stagecoach driver called for passengers. 2 months, he echoed, helping her up into the coach. I'll be counting every day. As the coach pulled away, Fiona leaned out the window, watching Adam's figure grow smaller in the distance. She touched the beaded bracelets on her wrists and smiled through her tears. This parting, unlike the last, held the promise of return. The journey east was long and tiring, but Fiona's spirits remained high. She wrote to Adam at every stop, posting letters that detailed her journey and reaffirmed her love. When she finally reached Boston, the city she had once called home felt foreign. Its crowded streets and formal society a stark contrast to the open spaces and genuine warmth of Silver Creek. Her father's house on Beacon Hill stood as imposing as ever. But without his presence, it felt like an empty shell. The housekeeper had maintained it well, but Fiona knew immediately that she would sell it. This was no longer her home, perhaps it never truly had been. The business of settling Henry Sullivan's estate took longer than Fiona had anticipated. There were meetings with lawyers, accounts to review, distant relatives to notify. She wrote to Adam explaining the delays, assuring him that nothing had changed in her heart. His letters in return sustained her through the tedious process. He wrote of the ranch, of the new calves, of improvements to the house he was making with her return in mind. Between the lines, she could read his longing, matching her own. 6 weeks after her arrival in Boston, as Fiona was finalizing the sale of her father's house, an unexpected visitor arrived. Margaret Thornton, her father's cousin, appeared at the door unannounced, her disapproving gaze taking in Fiona's simple dress and the beaded bracelets on her wrists. I've heard the most disturbing news, Margaret said without preamble, settling herself in the parlor, as though she owned it. About you selling Henry's house and running off to some frontier town to marry a cowboy. Fiona straightened her spine. It's hardly running off, Cousin Margaret. I'm 23 years old and quite capable of making my own decisions. Your father would be heartbroken to see you throw away everything he worked for, Margaret sniffed. For what? Some romantic notion about a man who probably just wants your inheritance? Adam doesn't know about my inheritance, Fiona replied evenly. And he doesn't care about it. He's built his own success. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Is this the same young man Henry forbade you to see years ago? The penniless ranch hand? He owns his own ranch now, Fiona said, her patience wearing thin. But yes, it's the same man. The man I've always loved. Love, Margaret scoffed. What does love matter when you'll be living in some crude shack in the middle of nowhere? When you'll have no society, no culture, nothing but dirt and cattle and endless work? For a moment, doubt flickered in Fiona's mind, not about Adam, but about her own ability to adapt to the life she was choosing. Then she remembered the peace she'd felt sitting on Adam's porch, watching the sunset over land that stretched to the horizon. She recalled the genuine welcome from townsfolk who valued hard work and honest dealings over social standing. I'll have everything that matters, she said firmly, including the respect of being my own person, not just Henry Sullivan's daughter. Margaret rose, her face pinched with disapproval. You'll regret this foolishness. When you're tired of playing pioneer, don't expect Boston society to welcome you back with open arms. After she left, Fiona sat in the silent house, turning Margaret's words over in her mind. Not the warnings about social standing, those meant nothing to her, but the practical concerns about the life she was choosing. It would be different from everything she knew, harder in some ways, simpler in others. That night, she wrote to Adam, not about Margaret's visit, but about her own thoughts. I want you to know that I understand what I'm choosing, she wrote. I have no illusions about frontier life. It won't always be easy. But a life without you, no matter how comfortable, would be empty. I choose you, Adam. I choose us. Whatever challenges come, we'll face them together. His reply arrived a week later, just as Fiona was finalizing the last of her arrangements. The letter was shorter than his others, but its words burned themselves into her heart. Fiona, my love, he wrote, I've been thinking about what you said about understanding the choice you're making. I want you to know that I understand what I'm asking of you. You're giving up a life of comfort and ease for one that will sometimes be hard and unforgiving. So I've been working on something. I can't make Silver Creek into Boston, and I wouldn't want to. But I can make our home a place worthy of you. Frank says I'm driving everyone crazy with my demands for perfection. But you deserve nothing less. All I want is to make you happy. Come home to me, Fiona. Come home. 2 days later, Fiona boarded a westbound train. Her heart lighter than it had been in years. Her father's house was sold, his affairs settled, and what belongings she valued were either packed in her trunks or being shipped to Silver Creek. She was leaving Boston behind with no regrets, only anticipation for the life that awaited her. The journey west seemed both endless and too swift. Each mile brought her closer to Adam, yet she wished for more time to prepare herself for the reunion. Would he have changed in the weeks they'd been apart? Would she see doubt in his eyes? As the stagecoach crested the final hill before Silver Creek, Fiona's nervousness peaked. Then she saw him standing tall beside his wagon at the stage stop, scanning the approaching coach with obvious anticipation. Her fears melted away. This was Adam, her Adam, and she was finally coming home. The coach had barely stopped when Fiona was opening the door, not waiting for the driver's assistance. Adam strode toward her, his face breaking into a smile that erased the weeks of separation. He caught her as she practically flew into his arms, lifting her off her feet in an embrace that spoke volumes. "You're here," he breathed against her hair. "You're really here." "I'm home," she replied, pulling back just enough to meet his gaze. "And I'm never leaving again." Their kiss drew cheers and good-natured whistles from onlookers, but neither paid any mind. When they finally broke apart, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I have something to show you," he said, his eyes alight with excitement. "At the ranch." He helped load her trunks into the wagon, then lifted her onto the seat beside him. As they drove out of town, Fiona leaned against his shoulder, content in a way she had never been in Boston. "What have you been up to?" she asked, noting the barely contained eagerness in his manner. "You'll see," was all he would say. As they approached the ranch, Fiona noticed changes immediately. The yard had been meticulously groomed, with new flower beds bordering the path to the house. The porch had been expanded, with a swing hanging at one end. But it was the interior that took her breath away. Adam had completely refurnished the main room. A new sofa and chairs created a comfortable seating area before the fireplace. Curtains hung at the windows, simple but elegant, and a colorful rug covered the plank floor. On one wall hung a painting of the mountains visible from their land, beautifully executed in oils. "Adam," she gasped, "when did you do all this?" "Been working on it since the day after you left," he admitted, watching her reaction closely. "Ordered some things from Denver, made others myself." She turned to him, tears welling in her eyes. "It's perfect." He took her hand, leading her toward a closed door. "There's more." Beyond the door was a room she hadn't seen during her previous visits, a study, with bookshelves lining the walls and a large desk positioned near windows that faced east. "I remember how you loved to read," Adam said, "and how you used to write in that journal of yours. I thought you might want a space of your own." Fiona walked into the room, trailing her fingers over the desk's polished surface. "You did this for me? I want you to be happy here," he said simply. "I want this to feel like your home, not just mine." She crossed back to him, taking both his hands in hers. "It already does, because you're here." Their wedding took place 2 weeks later, in the small church at the edge of town. Fiona wore a simple white dress ordered from Denver, and Adam looked handsome in a new suit that made him slightly uncomfortable but exceedingly handsome. The entire town turned out for the celebration that followed, a testament to the respect Adam had earned and the welcome they extended to his bride. As they danced under stars on their wedding night, surrounded by friends who had become like family, Fiona felt the beaded bracelets on her wrists one whole, one mended. Like their love, she thought. Once broken, but now restored, stronger for having endured the separation. Happy? Adam asked, holding her close as the fiddle player struck up another tune. More than I ever imagined possible, she replied. Later, in the privacy of their home, Adam carefully removed the bracelets from her wrists and placed them in a small wooden box he had carved himself. To keep them safe, he explained, so we can someday show them to our children and tell them how their mother wore a beaded bracelet I once made and how I pulled out its broken match from my pocket when she returned to me. Our children, Fiona echoed, her heart swelling at the thought. Our future, Adam corrected, drawing her into his arms. It starts tonight. The years that followed brought challenges, as Fiona had known they would. Drought threatened the ranch in their second year of marriage. A harsh winter the following year claimed some of their cattle, but there were joys too abundant ones that far outweighed the difficulties. Their first child, a son they named Henry after Fiona's father, was born on a cold January night in 1878. Adam paced outside the bedroom door as the town's midwife attended Fiona, his face pale with worry, until the lusty cry of his newborn son pierced the night. He has your eyes, Fiona told him as he held their child for the first time, his large hands cradling the tiny form with gentle wonder. And your spirit, I'd wager, Adam replied, his voice thick with emotion. God help us all. They laughed together, exhausted and exhilarated by the miracle they had created. A daughter followed 2 years later, Emma, with her father's dark hair and her mother's determined chin. Then another son, William, who arrived in a hurry during a summer thunderstorm, with only Adam to help bring him into the world. Through it all, the ranch prospered. Adam's careful management and innovative ideas expanded their holdings and increased their herd. Fiona's shrewd investments of her inheritance provided capital for improvements that made the bar one of the most successful operations in the territory. But it wasn't the financial success that mattered most to either of them. It was the home they had built together, a place of love and laughter, of hard work rewarded and dreams fulfilled. The house expanded as their family grew, but its heart remained the same. The main room where they gathered each evening, the porch where they watched sunsets, the study where Fiona wrote stories that eventually found their way to publication in Eastern magazines. On their 10th anniversary, Adam surprised Fiona with a trip to Denver, their first real vacation since their marriage. They attended the theater, dined in fine restaurants, and stayed in the grandest hotel in the city. But on their third night, as they dressed for dinner, Fiona found Adam standing by the window, a wistful expression on his face. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, coming to stand beside him. "Home," he admitted. "The children, the way the light falls across our land at sunset." Fiona smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I was thinking the same thing. Denver is lovely, but it's not home," he finished for her. They returned to the ranch a day early, unable to stay away any longer. As their wagon crested the hill overlooking their property, they paused to take in the sight. The house stood solid and welcoming against the backdrop of distant mountains. Their children, spotting the wagon, came running from where they had been playing under Frank's watchful eye. "Mama! Papa!" Henry called, now a sturdy boy of 8 with his father's confident stride. Emma followed, her dark braids flying behind her. 6-year-old William, struggling to keep up on shorter legs. Adam helped Fiona down from the wagon just in time to catch their daughter as she launched herself into his arms. Henry, trying to be grown up, settled for a more restrained hug from his mother, while William attached himself to her skirts. "Did you miss us?" Fiona asked, kneeling to embrace her youngest son. "Every minute," Henry declared solemnly, a phrase he had clearly picked up from adult conversation. Adam laughed, setting Emma down to ruffle William's hair. "And we missed you, every minute of every day." That evening, after the children were in bed and the house had settled into nighttime quiet, Adam and Fiona sat together on the porch swing, watching as the last colors of sunset faded from the sky. 10 years, Adam mused, his arm around Fiona's shoulders. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you walked into Holloway's saloon and turned my world upside down again. And sometimes it feels like we've always been here, just like this," Fiona replied, nestling closer. Adam reached into his pocket and pulled out a small package. "I have something for you, for our anniversary." Fiona unwrapped the paper to find a new bracelet similar to the original one he had made her so long ago, but more intricate, with their children's initials worked into the beaded pattern. "It's beautiful," she breathed, turning it to admire the craftsmanship. "I've improved my technique over the years," he said with a smile, helping her fasten it on her wrist. "But the sentiment remains the same. I loved you then, I love you now, and I'll love you always." "Always," Fiona echoed, turning to kiss him under the canopy of stars that had witnessed their reunion a decade before. 5 years later, as they celebrated Henry's 13th birthday, a letter arrived that would test the foundation they had built. It was from a publisher in New York, responding to a collection of stories Fiona had submitted months earlier. The publisher not only wanted to print her stories, but offered her a contract for a novel, requesting that she come to New York to discuss the details. "You have to go," Adam said that night after reading the letter. "This is what you've been working toward." Fiona shook her head. "I'm not leaving you and the children, not for weeks at a time." "It's not the same as before," he reminded her. "This isn't a permanent departure. It's a business trip, nothing more." "What about the children? Harvest is coming." "The children and I will manage just fine," Adam assured her. "And Harvest won't wait for publishers. It's true, but this opportunity might not come again." In the end, she agreed to go, though not without misgivings. The journey east brought back memories of her previous life, but this time, her heart remained firmly in Wyoming. The meetings in New York went well, the publisher was impressed with her work and enthusiastic about her novel idea, a story of frontier life told from a woman's perspective. "Your writing has an authenticity that's rare," the editor told her over lunch. "You clearly know the West in a way most of our authors don't." "I live it every day," Fiona replied simply. When the conversation turned to the possibility of her relocating to New York to be closer to the literary community, Fiona smiled and shook her head. "My home is in Wyoming," she said firmly, "with my husband and children." The editor seemed disappointed, but not surprised. "We expected as much? But you should know, Mrs. Irving, that you have genuine talent. Your stories could take you far." "I'm already exactly where I want to be," Fiona assured him. She returned home with a signed contract and the promise of a career she could pursue from the ranch. Adam met her at the stagecoach stop, pride evident in his face as she told him the news. "I knew you could do it," he said, lifting her into an embrace that made her laugh. "My wife, the famous author." "Hardly famous," she protested, though pleased by his enthusiasm. "Not yet," he corrected, "but you will be. And I'll be right here, telling everyone who will listen that I'm married to the most talented woman in Wyoming territory." As they drove home, Fiona reached for his hand. "Thank you for encouraging me to go, but I want you to know I was never tempted to stay, not for a moment." Adam squeezed her hand. "I never doubted you would come back." "Never?" she asked, remembering the fears of their earlier separation. "Never," he confirmed. "We've built something too strong to break, you and I." Their children greeted her return with excitement and a flurry of stories about their adventures while she was away. Henry, growing tall and serious like his father, had taken on extra responsibilities at the ranch. Emma had apparently instituted a strict schedule for household chores that had both her brothers complaining. William had lost another tooth and learned to lasso a fence post, a skill he demonstrated with exuberant if imperfect technique. That night, after the children were asleep, Fiona retrieved the wooden box that held the original beaded bracelets. She ran her fingers over them, remembering the young couple who had worn them and all they had endured to find their way back to each other. "Sometimes I can hardly believe how fortunate we are," she said as Adam joined her. "Not fortune," he replied, sitting beside her on their bed. "Determination, love, the willingness to fight for what matters." She leaned against him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come back to Silver Creek that day? If we had never found each other again?" Adam was quiet for a moment, considering. "I'd like to think we would have found our way to each other eventually. Some things are just meant to be." "Like us?" Fiona smiled. "Exactly like us." He kissed her softly. "Though I'm grateful we didn't have to wait any longer than we did." The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Henry, at 18, went east to attend college, the first in the family to do so. Emma, fiercely independent like both her parents, declared her intention to become a doctor, challenging the limited expectations for young women of her time. William, the most like Adam in temperament, threw himself into ranch work, developing a special touch with horses that promised to expand the family business in new directions. Through it all, Adam and Fiona's partnership deepened. They weathered illnesses, financial uncertainties, and the inevitable conflicts that arise in any marriage. But the foundation they had built proved sturdy enough to withstand any storm. Fiona's writing career flourished. Her novel, Frontier Heart, became an unexpected success, particularly among Eastern readers fascinated by authentic tales of Western life. She continued to write, producing a story collection and a second novel over the years, always drawing inspiration from the land and people she loved. Adam's ranch expanded to nearly 1,000 acres, employing several hands and becoming a cornerstone of the local economy. He served terms as town mayor and on the territorial legislature, helping to shape policies that protected small ranchers against the encroachment of large cattle companies. On their 25th anniversary, with their children grown and the ranch secure, Adam suggested they take a trip not to Denver or New York, but back to the meadow where he had proposed. "It's changed," Fiona observed as they spread a blanket among the wildflowers. The valley was more developed now, with fences marking property lines and a proper road replacing the trail they had once followed. "So have we," Adam replied, settling beside her. His hair was streaked with silver now, lines of experience marking a face that had only grown more handsome with the years. Fiona, her own copper hair showing threads of gray, leaned against him. "For the better, I think. Definitely for the better." Adam reached into his pocket and pulled out a small package. "I have something for you." Inside was a new bracelet, even more intricate than the anniversary one he had given her 15 years earlier. This one incorporated beads of silver and tiny turquoise stones among the colored glass. "It's exquisite," Fiona breathed, admiring the workmanship. "When did you learn to do this?" "Been practicing," Adam said with a smile. "Thought I'd take up a hobby now that the children don't need us quite so much." As he fastened it on her wrist, Fiona noticed that he wore a matching one, the first time he had made one for himself. "We match," she said, touching the beads on his wrist. "As we should." He kissed her, a kiss that still held the passion of their youth, but was deepened by the decades of shared life. 25 years, Fiona. The best of my life." "And mine," she agreed. They stayed in the meadow until sunset, talking of memories and plans, of their children's futures and their own. As the golden light faded to purple dusk, Adam helped Fiona to her feet. "Home?" he asked. She nodded, gathering the picnic things. "Home." As they rode back to the ranch in a proper buggy now, not on horseback, Fiona thought about the journey that had brought them here, the separation, the reunion, the life they had built together. None of it would have happened if she hadn't worn the beaded bracelet he once made, if Adam hadn't pulled out its broken match from his pocket that night in Holloway's saloon. Small choices, large consequences. A girl who kept a token of young love, a man who carried a reminder of what he had lost and hoped to regain. Two halves of a whole, separated but never truly broken. "What are you thinking about?" Adam asked, noticing her contemplative mood. Fiona smiled, touching the new bracelet on her wrist. "About how sometimes the most important things in life hang by the slenderest of threads, and how grateful I am that ours held strong." Adam's hand found hers, warm and sure as it had been for 25 years. "It always will." And in that moment, as in countless moments before, Fiona knew it to be true. Their story begun in youth, interrupted by circumstance, resumed through courage and hope, would continue as long as they drew breath. It was written not just in the books she published or the land they tended, but in the lives they had shaped together and the love that had only grown stronger with each passing year. As the ranch came into view, lights glowing welcome in the gathering darkness, Fiona leaned her head against Adam's shoulder. In the distance, William was visible, waiting on the porch to greet them. Emma's buggy was parked by the barn, a surprise visit from their daughter, now in her second year of medical school in Denver. And a telegram had arrived that morning from Henry, announcing his intention to return home after graduation. "Look at what we've built," Adam said softly, pride evident in his voice. "A life worth living," Fiona replied. "A love worth fighting for." He turned to her, the same green eyes that had captivated her in youth, now looking at her with the depth of mature love. "Always worth fighting for. Yesterday, today, and all our tomorrows." As they pulled up to the house they had made into a home, surrounded by the family they had created and the land they had nurtured, Fiona felt the weight of the beaded bracelet on her wrist. A simple thing, really just glass and leather and the skill of a young man's hands, but it had been the thread that connected them across time and distance, the symbol of a love that had endured. And as Adam helped her down from the buggy, his hand strong and sure beneath hers, Fiona knew with absolute certainty that some bonds, once forged, could never truly be broken. They might stretch, they might fray, but if the hearts on either end remained faithful, they would always find their way back to wholeness. Just as she and Adam had found their way back to each other all those years ago in a dusty frontier town, when she wore the beaded bracelet he once made, and her cowboy pulled out its broken match from his pocket.